By the end of this short video, you're going to have a better understanding of how databases work in Bubble. So let's go to the Data tab here in our Bubble app, and we're going to go to Data Types. So a database in Bubble, you can think of it kind of like a SQL database if you've ever written SQL before. You can also think of it like Google Sheets or Excel spreadsheets, and I'll tell you how you can think about it that way in a minute. But essentially, every data type here in Bubble is a database table. So that's something that you would be familiar with if you have used SQL before. And it's also something that you'd be familiar with if you've used an Excel spreadsheet before. So you can think of each table as a different Excel spreadsheet. So we have our data types, and let's take the user data type as an example. Each data type in Bubble is going to have fields for that data type. So fields you could think of as different columns in an Excel spreadsheet or columns in the table for a SQL database. So by default, each Bubble user is going to have an email field by default, so you don't even need to create it, modified date, created date, and slug. Slug is kind of like the unique ID that would allow you to have a page URL for each user or each data type thing. A thing is a specific row in the database in Bubble. So that's what the slug is. Created date and a modified date get updated automatically. And every data type that you create automatically is going to have the modified date, created date, and slug. So if I create a new data type, for example, so let's say I want to create a data type which is a home. So let's say it's a Zillow type app. I'm creating a home. So by default, we have the modified date, created date, and slug. And then by default, we're also going to have a creator field. And the creator field is the user data type. So what that's doing is linking this new home table that we just created with the user table. So whoever, whichever user creates that home, it's going to link it to that creator. Now, if you have it kind of created in a back-end workflow, then Bubble will just set this as, app admin as the creator. But this is a really useful field. A lot of times you might want to, sort for saved homes or homes created by a specific user, for example. So let's talk for a minute about adding fields in our database. So fields, as I mentioned before, are like columns in your data table. It's essentially adding attributes that you're going to save about this data field. So if we wanted to have, an address, for example, the address would be a data type of text. So we can save that, and now by default there is an address field. Now you can add lots of other types of fields. So you could say, number of bedrooms, and that would be a number field, for example. And I'm just going to go through some of the other fields. You can see there's basic field types such as image, file, yes, no. This is like a Boolean if you're familiar with that. Essentially, whether it's yes or no type information, which is really useful. Date interval, date range, date, numeric range, and number. So number of bedrooms would just be a number. Now, I'm going to show you the way to relate fields, data types to other data types. So kind of like what I talked about already, where the creator of this home is related to the user. So let's say we have another data type called realtor, and let's create that. And then we could just add a name, name for the realtor is a text. And then under the home, let's say we want to connect the realtor to the home. So the field type would be a realtor because we're connecting it. And then here Bubble is going to ask you whether it's a list or not. So this is asking whether this field could have multiple realtors for one home. If you check it, that would mean that there's multiple realtors for one home. If you uncheck it, that means that there's only one realtor for one home. So in our case, let's just keep it unchecked, but just know that's what that checkbox does. And that's something that is really helpful to keep in mind. So let's go ahead and create that. So now we have the realtor, the number of bedrooms, and the text. One other thing I want to briefly mention is the privacy rules here in the data tab. So privacy rules allow you to prevent unauthorized people from viewing the data in your database. And this is really, really important to get right, especially if you have sensitive data, sensitive user data that you don't want people to access if they shouldn't. So the way to do this is defining rules in your database. So by default, you can see these data types are publicly visible. What that means is if someone has the right coding knowledge and kind of understands how to look into your app, they could see all of the homes, all of the realtors in your app, even if they're not logged in and even if it's not their home, for example. So kind of Bubble on the front end, you might display lists, you might filter them, but the app is still kind of showing the list in the back end, which is something that you want to make sure that you prevent. So to do that, we want to go in and define rules for each of our data. So let's say rule name is owner. Here we could say, when this home's creator is current user, we're going to show all the fields. But when it's not, we're going to uncheck, for example. Now, this is something that I don't have time to go into everything in this video, but something to be aware of is when you do this, that you might accidentally hide data that you don't want hidden. And then you're going to be testing your app and you're going to see that something isn't working and you're going to try and debug it and not figure it out. And then you're going to realize it's because you have a privacy setting that's hiding that data. So just something to be aware of. That's kind of a quick overview of the privacy settings tab as well. So again, I hope this was helpful. Leave a comment below if you have any questions. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I'll see you in the next video.